Bitcoin might have just changed forever and nobody even noticed it happened. Of course, it's Monday morning. We see a new $1 million Bitcoin price prediction, and we see yet again the same old announcement that Michael Saylor is buying more Bitcoin. But when we start looking at the Bitcoin FOMO that is starting to spread across the world, you guys are probably going to come to the conclusion by the end of today's video that what just happened might just be a little bit different. Before we talk about that, let's break down this brand new $1 million Bitcoin price prediction.
Again, I'm sorry, I just want, we got a minute left after last week in the Genius Act, and you suddenly are, I don't know whether you're, I look at you as Mr. Equity guru or crypto guru. Are you able to do both? You have been. You're going to continue this?
Yes. You know, FundStrat clients know my goal is to find them good ideas and make them money. And now I want to do that with shareholders. You know, I am dedicated to delivering a great return for anyone who invests in any of our ideas, including whether it was our granny shots, which is outperforming year to date and almost 1.9 billion of AUM after 8 months. Now with BitMine, I am dedicated to really making this one of the best performing stocks.
People need to, we don't have time to go into exactly how that works, but here we are 120 basically on Bitcoin, which you used to say at 70, and you know, that was a 60% move or something that you were forecasting as within the next couple of months, or at least this year. Here we are now, what, 150?
I think the 200 to 250,000 for Bitcoin still makes sense, because that would still only value it at 25% of the size of the gold market.
Okay.
So I think digital gold means Bitcoin should be worth over $1 million per Bitcoin, and it could happen in the next few years. But maybe pricing 25% of that, especially with Genius Act, makes sense.
Are you going?
So $1 million Bitcoin in the next few years, quote unquote, makes sense. That was a bombshell that Tom Lee just dropped on CNBC this morning, but it's not the thing that, for me, I thought was most consequential, that most people aren't paying attention to. So in that clip on CNBC, they mentioned the Genius Act and all of these other laws that just passed in America earlier in the week. Obviously, we had Crypto Week come out of Washington, D.C., but I think we're all missing the forest for the trees. I don't think we're paying enough attention to what now is just starting to heat up a little bit. So we could see that Emirates Airline, this is the largest airline in the Middle East, is now accepting Bitcoin for payments. I thought that was interesting, but then something else changed over the weekend that I also thought was pretty interesting. We're now starting to see the first little uptick in the search terms of buy Bitcoin on Google. So this means that maybe, just maybe, we're about to see a retail-induced Bitcoin parabola like we saw in 2017. Again, we've been speculating for a long time. We've been wondering for a long time, where is retail? Bitcoin's at $120,000 a coin, and literally nobody's paying attention. All of the retail noise, it's not here. For some time, we've kind of been speculating that maybe a lot of this retail interest right now is buying publicly traded stocks. So your MicroStrategies or your mining shares. And again, some people have speculated maybe we're not going to see this massive parabola like we did see in 2017. This right here is my favorite chart. This is kind of what I think of as a cheat sheet for Bitcoin. When I look at this chart, this is the 2017 Bitcoin bull run. And I kind of think of it as a cheat sheet because I think this is what the next bull run is going to look like. Everybody thinks that Bitcoin's changed. Everybody thinks that now that the institutions are in Bitcoin, we're going to see diminishing returns. I don't think that's the case. I think we're going to see something much more similar to like we saw in 2017 when Bitcoin 20x'd in literally 9 months. That's exactly what this crazy chart on screen shows us. And that is because of a lot of the institutional and big boy demand that we're going to be breaking down in a moment. I got a new clip coming out of BlackRock that I do want to play for you guys that I think is pretty interesting, because BlackRock looks as if they're moving more and more into Bitcoin, which again is kind of it's a little bit interesting, but I want to cover some more of the recent news that I saw this week. We saw Rumble. This is a $3 billion YouTube competitor, came out and partnered with MoonPay to let 58 million users buy and sell Bitcoin. I think this is interesting. This is another one of these signposts that the big boys are moving into Bitcoin. A clip as well that I haven't quite showed you guys yet. Vanek, $110 billion giant, predicting Bitcoin to hit $180,000 this cycle. Again, Bitcoin is just now starting to enter the big leagues. Speaking of the big leagues, this here is looking at all of the Bitcoin ETFs on the orange line. And we can see we're comparing this against all of the gold ETPs. So these are exchange traded products. We can see just how quickly Bitcoin's grown. Already in a year and a half, Bitcoin's up to about $160 billion worth of assets under management. The 5,000-year-old pet rock, as Warren Buffett calls it, gold, their ETPs in total is up at around $200 billion. And again, it's taken gold about 22 years to reach $200 billion. It's taken Bitcoin 22 months to reach $140 billion. So this is pretty crazy. We are going to be flipping gold in the not too distant future. And like Tom Lee kind of laid out in this clip that I just played for you guys, haven't played it all yet. I might play a little bit more later. If Bitcoin simply flips gold, we're looking at $1 million Bitcoin. This is pretty crazy. It's nearly as crazy as Michael Saylor coming out, buying more Bitcoin. He's now up to 607,000 coins. He announced another 6,000 Bitcoin buy, which again is, it's not chump change. It's massive. It's huge. And we're now starting to, I think, see the acceleration of the trend. The trend, the only trend that I care about is this trend right here. We're seeing Bitcoin fly off the exchanges. Absolutely. Have a look at this. This is one of the most interesting trends I think we can see in Bitcoin right now. And again, it's actually also a trend I want to talk a little bit more about in a moment, because I do have another clip for you guys I want to play that I think is pretty interesting. We start thinking about just how much supply there is right now on the exchanges. So let's check this one out from, once again, Tom Lee. Today could be a little bit of a Tom Lee special. I've got another clip that I'm going to play for you after this one.
We always get a Bitcoin comment from you before we let you go. Normally, it got stuck under 100. That's a pretty, it's a psychological level, I would imagine.
Yeah, I think some of this could be, there's a lot of folks who don't want Bitcoin over 100,000, and some of it may be the exchanges themselves are concerned because there is a pretty low supply of Bitcoin available over the counter. So you have a supply shortage, and if Bitcoin makes a move above 100,000, I think there'd be a big chase. So I'm still confident Bitcoin's going to close much higher before year end.
Before year end.
Before year end, yeah.
So break $100,000 before the end of the year?
Yeah, well above 100,000 before year end. It's just a matter of time.
It's December 2nd. It's not that long, Tom. So it's going to do it in the next 4 weeks.
Tom makes bold short-term
I know,
calls.
you're nuts, and they all come. Usually they come true.
Well, Tom does make bold calls. That clip, of course, was from a couple of weeks ago. But I think it highlights, again, the trend that is now starting to get a little bit of attention. That is the diminishing amount of Bitcoin on the exchanges for sale. Every day, this trend continues to accelerate to the downside. We continue to see more and more Bitcoin leave the exchanges. And I just don't think this trend is going to slow down. I think it's only going to accelerate as we see more and more publicly traded companies and huge asset managers make a move into Bitcoin, like I want to show you here in a moment. Before we get to the, let's call it the BlackRock news, let's talk about this supply shock in a little bit more detail. I haven't showed you guys this chart yet. This is looking at just the amount of Bitcoin flowing into the ETFs versus the amount of Bitcoin that is mined. Again, just the ETFs are buying up more Bitcoin that is mined on a daily basis. And now that we're going to start to see retail come in, I think this is where we need to start thinking in a much bigger way. I think things are going to get crazy. Again, a lot of people think, Bitcoin is, Bitcoin's going to top at 250, 300, 500, who knows? But I found this really cool tweet this morning. This is posted by Bitcoin News. We can see even if you bought one Bitcoin at the top of every Bitcoin cycle, you're still up by 420%. That's right. So if you bought the exact top in 2013 at $1,300 a coin, if you bought the exact top in 2017 at $19,000 a coin, and let's assume you bought in the high 60s in 2021, well, guess what? You're still up by 420% if you actually held the Bitcoin. This is why we always tell you guys, Bitcoin is a long-term trade. You don't just buy Bitcoin and hope to get rich in 6 months. Like most people, retail included, they buy Bitcoin, they see it go down by 10% and they sell because they don't know what they own. You need to hold on to your Bitcoin in any way, shape, or form that you can. I think this chart that I just saw, again, it was posted today. It's a brilliant chart. It highlights the point I always make to you guys. Never, ever, ever sell your Bitcoin. It is going up forever, Laura, and there really is no second best. Again, I was actually shocked when I saw this chart. Bitcoin's up by 420% if you did not sell, despite buying at the 3 worst times in history. Before I talk a little bit more about BlackRock and their recent, they said something interesting about the $315 trillion bond market. Let's just say that. That's all I will say for now. I'll remind you guys, if you are looking for a way to not sell your Bitcoin this bull run and actually hold your Bitcoin for the long term, I always recommend you guys never sell your Bitcoin. Don't pay the tax hit. Borrow against your Bitcoin. I think the best place to do that is over on FIREFISH. They're a fully backed Bitcoin peer-to-peer lending platform. I think they're absolutely great. I've actually used them twice myself. I'm just testing the product. And as you guys can see, I've got 2 loans open right now on FIREFISH. It's really easy. It's a 3-minute process to start a loan and finish a loan, and you get paid on the same day. There's no hassle-some or tiresome loan processes. It's literally a 3-minute process and you get paid on the exact same day. So I'm a big fan of what FIREFISH is doing. I'm going to be using them for the rest of this Bitcoin bull run to actually, get a little bit of liquidity for the Bitcoin that I'm sitting on so that I never have to sell my Bitcoin. And again, FIREFISH is really cool. If you use a promo code Luke or use the description or the link down below in the description, you're going to get 30% off your first loan with FIREFISH. So definitely check those guys out. I think they are building the most in-need product in the entire Bitcoin space. So many people are still wrongly selling their Bitcoin and they're missing out on returns like this. If you don't sell, you could be up by 420%. I think that's absolutely massive. And it's nearly as massive as what BlackRock might have just done recently. I think BlackRock is making some really interesting moves publicly in the Bitcoin space. But if you look at what BlackRock is doing privately, things get even more interesting. Okay, so today I want to talk a little bit more about why BlackRock just did what they did. So BlackRock is literally ditching the $315 trillion debt market and quietly buying Bitcoin. I know how crazy that sounds, but you can see the headline here. Big funds are ditching 20-year bonds as BlackRock and peers shun long-term debt, nudging some money toward Bitcoin hedges. So today I want to run the numbers and I want to run the maths. What would happen if these large money managers like BlackRock continue doing what they're already doing, dumping debt and buying Bitcoin? I think it's a really interesting rabbit hole, and it's even more interesting when you consider what BlackRock's COO just said in a recent interview.
The financial universe that are thinking about getting into this space now?
It's a great question. I think from our lens, it's a very, what I'm going to say is going to be very simple. Executing it is extremely hard. So I recognize that. But to us, it's very basic. You basically have a new set of exposures. the real utility in Unlock is to be able to put them in the whole portfolio. And interestingly enough, I think you could turn the telescope around also and say, ultimately, how do you put these capital markets exposures in digital wallets? And how do you go? So if you think about the bridge strategy of this alternate digital asset universe and bringing it to the capital markets, I think it's naive to assume, and this doesn't have to be in a month, but if you look out over time, it's naive to assume that you don't also have to think through how do you bring the traditional capital markets to this alternative universe. And I think both connection points will define the next decade.
I couldn't agree more. And the best example of it, by the way, was the ETFs. So we got all thrown a curveball in the last minute. There were no in-kind creates. And so we were forced to try and figure out how to make old world meet new world, right? And so hopefully in the next version thereof, we're going to have more of a synthesis of those two things. So.
And this is the kicker. The old world is not meeting the new world. The new world is destroying the old world. Again, why is the bond market $300 trillion in size? It's because we live in an environment where there's $900 trillion of capital looking for a safe place to store its value. That's the only reason the debt market's as big as it is. So the new world, Bitcoin, it's not going to learn to coexist with the debt market. It's going to destroy it in the long term. In the short term, you might see some Bitcoin-backed bonds and all of these other very fancy instruments. But in the long run, there is no cohesion happening with these two asset classes. It is Bitcoin, and then it is the old world, the fiat world. And this is why we're seeing, as the headline lays out, bond buyers' shocking strike leaves BlackRock struggling. BlackRock used to tell people to buy bonds, but not anymore. Now we're watching the global bond market just begin to crater a little bit. Then let's take a look at the biggest contributors to the global debt market and who stands to lose the most if these two markets are not able to coexist. Of course, we can see the US, $51 trillion bond market. China, $21 trillion. Japan, look at that, $11 trillion. They've got a massive debt market because they do have one of the biggest debt bubbles in the entire world. I think that's super interesting. Very, very interesting indeed. And of course, what's going to happen? Well, I think we are going to begin to see, Bitcoin-backed bonds, and we're going to begin to see the biggest players in the debt market slowly but quietly accumulate bigger and bigger positions into Bitcoin. This chart here caught my eye. BlackRock already owns 3% of all of the Bitcoin in existence. Just think about that for a minute. 3% of all of the Bitcoin is owned by BlackRock. They were one of the biggest sellers of government debt previously. Now, not so much. Now they're just looking for a little bit of a hedgy and a wedgie, and that hedge is Bitcoin. Again, I think Parker Lewis put on a really good talk recently. It was Bitcoin is not a hedge. And again, it's not a hedge, but that's probably not a rabbit hole I want to dive into today. The rabbit hole I want to focus on is what happens to all of the world's money if the biggest players in the world just slowly but surely start looking for that escape valve. You guys can see the global debt market. Right now, it's about $315 trillion. Real estate, $370 trillion. Global wealth. You can just say, oh my God. Now, I never talk about the derivatives market because I don't want people to think I'm crazy when I actually include the 1 quadrillion, that's right, $1,000 trillion derivative market into my calculations with Bitcoin. I just look at the debt market, real estate market, fiat markets, and the money supply in the equity markets. The $900 trillion. But again, if we start thinking about just how big the derivatives market is, that's where numbers just get wonky because the derivatives market dwarfs everything. It's absolutely massive. When you consider Bitcoin is just 2 of these little tiny cubes on screen. The derivatives market it's actually massive when we start thinking about that. And now Michael Saylor is now starting to tap all of these different markets. These products, Strike, Strive, Stride, they're all designed to tap into that $315 trillion debt market that I think is going to be eviscerated by Bitcoin in the, let's call it the medium to long term. Who knows what's going to happen? Right now, we are at $119,000. Hello. That's actually, we're moving. I don't, again, ignore the bear. One of these 20 to 30% corrections, I would encourage you guys to be aggressively buying the dip. That's just what I'm doing. I'm buying the dip, especially now that we're just starting to see Google Trends data turn positive for Bitcoin, to Edward's comments, where I think we're just now going to start moving up higher much quicker. That's what I will say. We got some people tuning in from Berlin, Spain. I'm in France right now. I'd love to know where you guys are. Obviously, don't dox yourself if you don't want to. If you are actually planning on doing a little bit of an Asia trip next month, you may or may not run into this big mug, because I'm going to be speaking at Bitcoin Asia. This is going to be the biggest Bitcoin conference in Asia. If you guys are heading down, I highly recommend you check it out. Come say good day. Eric Trump, the vice president and son of Donald, is going to be speaking at the conference. We got the president of Metaplanet, Mark Moss. You got a ton of big names there. And then you got my big ugly mug. I'm going to be talking as well. So again, if you are looking to get your hands on some tickets for Bitcoin Asia 2025, if you use a promo code Luke10, that's going to get you 10% off your ticket. You can find a link for that with the promo code down below in the description. So again, I'll be in France for who knows how much longer, but let's call it a couple more weeks. Where else are you guys tuning in from? Actually, something else just got triggered here by a comment, triggered in a good way. Andreas, I think we have a good chance that Bitcoin will reach $500,000 until the end of Trump's term. So Trump's term, coincidentally, actually lines up with the 2028 Bitcoin halving. So again, there's an interesting discussion around, what actually causes Bitcoin cycles. Is it the political cycle that's tied into the 4-year money printing cycle that we always talk about? Or is it the Bitcoin halvings? There is a debate. It's gone on for a long time. I think it's a bit of both, to be entirely honest. And that's why I'm incredibly bullish right now, because this 4-year money printing cycle hasn't even started. So to the comment and to the question, yes, I do think it's a chance we see 500,000 big ones by the end of 2028. That's the end of Trump's cycle. And Clifford here makes a really interesting point. Most of the 1,200 trillion derivatives market are Forex and interest rate hedges. Consider the fact that Bitcoin also solves that problem. That is true. It does. Bitcoin solves every problem, which is pretty crazy. The only problem it doesn't solve is our governments and central bankers' will to steal our wealth. It doesn't solve that problem for our bureaucrats. Again, just another reason to buy Bitcoin. Another reason, I think, is the fact that I think time is running out here. I think Bitcoin's sitting here at 119, as Phil mentioned in the chat. I think it's a great buying opportunity. I think Bitcoin will only continue going up and to the right forever, but I think the next 6 to 12 months could be incredibly bullish. If you guys are actually looking for somewhere to buy your Bitcoin, I always recommend you check out the Bitcoin Well. The reason why I love the Bitcoin Well is they don't take custody of your Bitcoin. They're just like FIREFISH, my other show partner that helps you borrow against your Bitcoin. They don't take custody of your Bitcoin either. That's because I always tell you guys, just self-custody your Bitcoin. That's the #1 rule of Bitcoin. Everybody always asks me, Luke, what do I do? I've got Bitcoin stuck on an exchange. Put it in a hardware wallet. Doesn't matter what you get, just get a hardware wallet, put your Bitcoin on there, and then take it into self-custody. This is why I love the Bitcoin Well. They force you guys to self-custody by default. And then once you've actually, let's say you buy your Bitcoin from the Bitcoin Well, you put it in a hardware wallet. I always encourage you guys to then back up your Bitcoin 12 or 24 words onto titanium, not paper. Again, I think the titanium plates you can get from Stampseed, they're the best in the game. Once you got your Bitcoin backed up on titanium, you can actually sleep a little bit more stress-free at night. You don't need to worry about house fires, hurricanes, floods. even if you hide your titanium well enough, you also don't need to worry about those pesky $5 wrench attacks. So again, if you want to check out the plates from Stampseed, you guys can get, I think it's 15% off anything you want to buy from Stampseed with the promo code Luke15. So everything you need to know to look after your Bitcoin and store it correctly, link down below in the description. Because again, I think as price continues to do what price is going to do, and that is number goes up, I think you guys are going to want to just make sure that you are actually protecting your precious Bitcoin the way it deserves to be protected. Again, we're at about $119,000 right now at the time of recording. There's 23 weeks left in the year. MicroStrategy needs to average 17,000 Bitcoin buys per week to reach $1 million Bitcoin. Do you think this will happen this year? Edward, I think that's one of the best comments I've ever seen in the comment section here on YouTube. I don't think we need MicroStrategy to buy the 17,000 coins. I think all we need is MicroStrategy to keep doing what it's doing. Today, they bought 6,200 Bitcoin. If you zoom out a little bit and take a little bit of a peep at Sailor Tracker, we can see Michael's pretty consistently buying a similar amount of Bitcoin every week. Again, not every week. There's no rules here. But if you scroll down here, nearly every Monday, we're seeing around those 5,000 Bitcoin buys. So 6,000 on the 21st of July, 4,000 on the 14th, 4,900 on the 30th. We only had a small little buy here on June 23. But if you guys just have a look and calculate all of MicroStrategy buys here in this column, you can see he's buying about 5,000 Bitcoin a week. And then the other publicly traded Bitcoin treasury companies are probably, they're buying the rest. They're the guys that I think will eventually be buying just as much, if not more, than MicroStrategy is buying, because we're nearly seeing a new Bitcoin treasury company added every single day. It's not slowing down, it's accelerating. We've seen 23 over the past 30 days. And I mean, you guys can see this trend very clearly here. The majority of these guys buy Bitcoin and they never sell, which is pretty crazy. Congratulations to Marathon Holdings for reaching that big 50,000 Bitcoin milestone. They're the second, but they won't be the last. So to answer your question, Edward, I don't think we need MicroStrategy alone. Speaking of MicroStrategy alone, I'm leaving some people alone. So I've got to run. I'm late, guys. Hope you have a good start to your Monday. And I will see you all in the next one. If you do want to get a little bit more bullish, you got more content from this crazy kid with the wild haircut, I'm going to put a link to a recent live stream that I did exposing the CBDC plots somewhere around there. And with that said, thank you so much for tuning in. I'll see you all in the next one.